Thank you. I identify with red today. This is homecoming week at Southeast Missouri State. I had the pleasure this morning of getting an early sneak peek and tour through Academic Hall. If any of you can this weekend during the open houses or at any time get through newly renovated Academic Hall, it is a thing of beauty. Cape Girardeau and the architects did a great job of blending modernization, upgrade, technical upgrade, and still maintaining a lot of the history back in history of Southeast, back to fixtures still among the modern fixtures in the center, old fixtures from the 1904 World's Fair. It is an outstanding place for the home of Southeast Missouri State University, and I'm proud to have it be a part of our City of Cape Girardeau. It's an unpaid political announcement. We're pleased today to be able to bring Police Chief Wes Blair to our club. He's kind of making the tour, and I'll give you a little bit of his background. Chief Blair has a diverse 16-year background in law enforcement. He served as Assistant Chief in Lancaster, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas, and most recently as Interim Chief in Lancaster. Chief Blair also has experience as a Federal Air Marshal and Border Patrol agent. Earlier in his career, he also served Lancaster as a Patrol Training and Communications Officer. Our new chief holds a Master's Peace Officer Proficiency certification from the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement Officer Standards and Education. He's an FBI National Academy graduate, holds a Master's of Public Administration from the University of Texas at Arlington, and earned a bachelor's degree in organizational leadership from Mountain State University. Wes is a resident of Cape Girardeau now, along with his wife Jennifer and his son Bryce. Please give a welcome, Rotary welcome today to Police Chief Wes Blair.
I'm going to apologize in advance a little bit first. I don't always bring my drink up with me, but since yesterday I've been fighting a head cold, and so I'm going to cough and hack a little bit too while I'm talking, so just bear with me on that. I was actually speaking with a friend of mine last night, and I was telling him, I'm like, hey, I've got this thing I've got to do tomorrow, and I'm not sure I'm going to have a voice. So he recommended doing a PowerPoint and just standing with the laser and just pointing at the words and everybody reading out loud. So, fortunately, I still have a little bit of a voice. My wife says she hopes that it's totally gone by the time I get home tonight. I'm not sure what that's all about, but anyway, but I'm very happy to be here. Really glad this worked out. I've spent the early part of the weekend, all weekend, early part of this week at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference up in Philadelphia, and I'm very excited coming back because those conferences always give us a lot of great ideas, and you get to visit with your peers really literally from all over the world. It's about 14,000 law enforcement leaders that make this conference every year, and there's workshops and sessions and all kinds of just great information that we all take back to our own respective agencies and cities and try to implement in our community. So you're going to see some ideas coming out of that once I've kind of germinated on those a little bit and make them applicable to our community. And I think that's one of the great things about our law enforcement world here in the United States is that we're big believers on networking and working with each other and sharing ideas and helping each other out. And we're not the kind of, we don't just hold it all in and say, well, my department's doing this, but I'm not going to share it with anybody else. We like to share, and so those kind of conferences always pump me up. It's almost like going to revival. Come back with a lot of great ideas and things to do in your community. But what I kind of wanted to talk to you all about today is, and I'm going to say y'all a lot because I am from Texas, and I hear that there's some baseball games going on. I'm not sure what that's about. I thought baseball season ended a couple of weeks ago. Go Cardinals, I guess. I will say that my staff has really been beating on me quite a bit about this. I need to get a Cardinals jersey and a Cardinals shirt, and all the ladies in my office yesterday were wearing Cardinal gear, and they sent me a picture of them all wearing that because I wasn't in the office yesterday, so they felt like they could get away with whatever they wanted to do. And I noticed though last night, by the time I went to bed, my phone was a lot quieter than it had been earlier in the day. So I'm guessing things didn't go great last night. But I'll stop beating on the Cardinals before y'all throw me out of here on that. I did make a bet with them though that if the Cardinals do win the World Series, but the day after the World Series, I will wear a Cardinals jersey to the office and they can have a good time with that. Of course, the other end of the bet is if the Cardinals don't win the World Series, opening day in April, they're all wearing Texas Rangers gear. So, so we'll see how that works out. But just want to kind of tell you all a little bit about my background and who I am and how I got here to Cape Girardeau and all the events that led up to that. And so some of you have already heard it, so feel free to nap or go back for seconds or something like that. But basically, law enforcement is something that I've always wanted to do ever since I was a first grader, really. My mom kept a scrapbook of both mine and my brother's lives growing up with just little different trinkets and things and pictures from our life. And there was a school assignment that I guess I had in first grade that I had to write what I wanted to be when I was an adult. And so so when I was an adult, I was going to be a police officer. I was going to be 100.5 pounds, which I surpassed that. And I was going to have a mustache, which I didn't do that either, but I did do the police thing. And so even very early on, just playing in our yard, we always played cops and robbers, like most kids do. And I never wanted to be the robber, I always wanted to be the cop. And I've always been that way ever since then. So my mom has even said, she goes, well, I knew pretty early that that's what you were going to do, because you always wanted to do that. So I put myself through a police academy. In Texas, there's a couple of ways to become a police officer. You either get hired by one of the larger agencies and they pay for your police academy and send you to it, or like a lot of officers, you go to the academy on your own at night or whenever while you're working another job, and you get your certification that way, and then you find an agency that will hire you. Well, and that's the path that I took. I was working during the day and I'd go to the academy at night. Well, towards the end of the academy, there was one evening that there were going to be some recruiters from the Border Patrol at our academy. And so our instructor said that, hey, they're going to be here the first 30 minutes of the night. If you're not interested in Border Patrol, you can just come 30 minutes late. Well, that sounded great to me. I came 30 minutes late, so I had no interest in doing anything like Border Patrol. But I got to class that night, and my fellow classmates were so pumped up about this whole Border Patrol thing, so they made it sound really, really good. And they said, we're all going to go test for the Border Patrol. You should come with us. I said, all right, I'll do that. So 5 of us went down to Market Hall in Dallas, big, huge area. 5 of us, and then there was probably another 1,000 or so people that went through the process for the Border Patrol. And I scored number 1 out of the 1,000. I'm not sure why. It was luck. It wasn't any skill on mine. And none of the other 5 of my group even made it through the whole assessment process. And so I started thinking, well, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. So I accepted a position with the Border Patrol, told them, they gave me options, where do you want to go? I had to list out my top 3. Told them I wanted to stay in Texas, so they assigned me to San Diego, California. Almost like the military, isn't it? Tell them what you want, so they make sure they give you just the exact opposite of that. And so I spent about a year out there doing that, and after I'd gone through the academy for the Border Patrol. So in the span of about 6 months, I went through a police academy and a Border Patrol academy. So I was pretty well trained and had not really done much work yet, but got to California, and where I was stationed was kind of up in the mountains of California, just outside of San Diego. A real small station. There was only about 8 of us at that station at the time. Now there's, I think, close to 75 agents, last I heard, at that station. But it was pretty remote, and so we relied on the local sheriff's deputies to help us out a lot if we had something big going on. And then the sheriff's deputies, there's usually only one or two of them out in that area, so if they had something that they needed help with, we would back them up and help them. Because like I mentioned earlier, in law enforcement, we're just one community, and we don't care what color your uniform is or what city your badge says on it. We all help each other out when the chips are down. While I was out there, I found that I really was having a whole lot more fun doing the sheriff's guys stuff than I was chasing illegal aliens and sending them back to Mexico. And the more I thought about that, the more I said, you know, I started the police academy because I wanted to be a police officer, not because I wanted to be an immigration agent. And so that's what I need to do. So I left the Border Patrol and went back to Texas because that's where I wanted to be. That's where all my family was, and got into local law enforcement and started off just as a patrol officer there in Lancaster, Texas, and spent several years just working patrol. I worked the deep night shift, was the greatest thing in the world. That's all I ever wanted to do, was work deep nights, because that's when all the fun stuff happens. And that's when all the bosses are in bed asleep and not really there to bother you too. And I think they still say that now. I think I've heard some of my guys say that. But excuse me a second. But I had a lieutenant there that said, I would really like for you to be a detective. And I said, I don't want any part of being a detective. That doesn't sound like much fun. Because all I saw were, just the detectives there. One, they're there during the day when all the bosses were there, so that wasn't appealing to me. But it didn't seem like they were going out and doing the most fun stuff on the job. So I resisted it for a while, and he kept saying, put in for it, please put in for it. And so I did. I put in for it. And they said, well, what would you like to do as a detective? I said, well, I want to work murders, because that's what everybody wants to work, is the murders and the really serious crimes. They said, okay, that sounds great. You're going to work financial crimes. And so I was like, all right, well, what are financial crimes? Because I had no idea what financial crimes were. And the lieutenant said, well, I'm not, it's like forgeries and check kiting, and there was this new thing called identity theft that was just starting up then. And he said, but here's the thing, I can't really train you on it because we don't really have anybody that's really worked identity crimes or financial crimes. I said, well, then what do I do? He's like, I don't know. Good luck. So my very first forgery that I worked was a forgery at a bank. And I didn't even know this at the time, but banks have investigators. Who knew? They have their own investigators that they employ. And so I called the banks, I'm working this forgery. Oh, you need to talk to the investigator. I was like, well, I am the investigator. They're like, no, you need to talk to the bank investigator. So I did. And about 5 minutes into the conversation with her on the phone, she just said, honey, you don't know what you're doing, do you?
Oh, God.
And I said, no, ma'am, I sure don't. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I said, this is my very first case, and I've never done anything like this. And so she said, well, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, I'm probably still trying to figure out this. Why don't you meet me for lunch? And I'm thinking, hey, great, I'm being hit on already. Maybe this isn't such a bad thing. But she took me to a lunch with a lot of local area detectives there in the Dallas Metroplex. They met once, it was all the financial crimes detectives in the Metroplex that would meet once a month for lunch and have a little meeting before and then have lunch, similar to what you guys are doing here. And they would talk about their cases, and I found pretty quickly, especially with identity theft, that those crimes cross jurisdictions. So they would sit there and compare cases and compare notes, and so because of her and some of the contacts I made there, I learned how to work financial crimes from the other agencies, and developed a pretty good network. And that was where it really started to generate with me that law enforcement is really a lot about networking. It's a lot about knowing your peers and working with your peers in the other cities, and that we're all too small to handle it all on our own. We've got to work together to do it. And so I spent a lot of time working the financial crimes. And I still got, in Lancaster, we averaged about 5 murders a year, which is not enough, luckily, to keep an investigator busy all the time. So I did get to work the murders when we would have them, so I still got to do what I was wanting to do. And I know that sounds a little morbid, that somebody wants to work murders, and it wasn't so much about the gore and all that, because I didn't care about that, but it was about being the person who sought justice for somebody who couldn't do it for themselves because they were no longer here. You know, those victims are no longer here, but their family members are here, and they're grieving because they've lost a loved one. And to be able to be that voice for those people and to make at least some sense of right out of that for them was very rewarding for me. And so I did that for a while. I then promoted up to sergeant in that bureau, in the detective bureau. We got a new person in, and I gave them financial crimes, and I started working our crimes against children, which was, again, another very rewarding job, but not a job you can't say that you enjoy working crimes against children, but I felt very rewarded because, again, it's victims who really couldn't take care of themselves or speak for themselves, and some of those were also murder victims too, unfortunately. But you were doing something to help or take care of somebody that couldn't ordinarily take care of themselves. And for me, that was very, very rewarding work. And that was what I really got into law enforcement for to begin with, not to go chase illegal aliens on the border, but it was to take care of people in the community that couldn't do it for themselves. And that was one of the things that appealed to me about doing that in Lancaster, was because that's where I grew up. I grew up in that community. My dad was a deacon in the church in that community. My mom worked for the pastor at the biggest church in the community. And all the little old ladies knew me since the day I was born. And when I was working, especially in patrol, it was rewarding to me at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to a little old lady's house because she had heard some noises outside that had scared her or whatever. And then for her to recognize, oh, that's Miss Long's grandson, I know everything's going to be okay, because it was somebody that they knew that was there. And that's what to me, that's what law enforcement is all about, is taking care of these people that can't ordinarily take care of themselves, and to give them a sense of peace and a sense of calm when they may not have it at that particular moment. So I got to do that with the child crimes, and I found that to be very rewarding. Kind of towards the end of my stint in the detective bureau, we got a new police chief in town, and we lost our assistant chief about the same time that we lost our police chief. They'd gone to other agencies. Well, the police chief came in and said, I need to promote an assistant chief, but I don't know anybody in this department, so we're going to do an assessment process for this. And I thought, well, you know what? I don't really want to be an assistant chief today, but maybe someday I might want to be an assistant chief. So I'll go through the assessment process, and I'll have a leg up later on when I really want to do it for real. I'll know what the process is like. I got promoted to assistant chief. Yeah, and in fact, the chief called me and he said, hey, you're the new chief. Well, I said, okay, that's pretty funny, but I know I'm not, because I was a sergeant, and there were some ranks between sergeant and assistant chief, so I was like, there's no way this is really going to happen. He's like, no, I'm serious. I really want you to be an assistant chief. And I even then was like, if this is a joke, chief, man, this really isn't very funny. And he's like, no, I'm serious. And in fact, this last week in Philadelphia, I had dinner with him one night, and he even brought that up, because you really thought I was joking with you back then, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I really did. And so I promoted up to assistant chief, and spent the last 5 years in Lancaster doing that and then ultimately becoming an interim chief when he left to go take a job at another agency in Norman, Oklahoma. And when he promoted me, I didn't have a bachelor's degree at the time. I had about 60 hours with an associate's degree. He said, I am promoting you, but there's one condition. You have 2 years to get your bachelor's degree. And if you don't have it within 2 years, or that I can't see that you're really working towards having it, I'm going to demote you back to sergeant. Well, that was some incentive to go ahead and get my bachelor's degree, which is something that I always kind of kicked along, going, oh, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. And as we do with a lot of things in life, I just kept putting it off and putting it off. And, got married, had a kid, and put it off more and put it off more. But when I found out my job depended on it, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this then. So I did. I even managed to graduate with honors. and still stay married and still have a son that knew who I was. And so as soon as I finished that, you know, I proudly went in and showed him my diploma, and like, I did what you asked, I got it done. He's like, I'm proud of you. He said, have you signed up for your master's degree yet? I was like, oh, that wasn't part of the deal. He's like, well, he said, I'm not going to demote you if you don't do it, but you need to do it. He said, you're chief potential. You need a master's degree to do that in most places. I'm not going to leave you alone until you do it. He said, you're already used to going to school, so it'll be really easy for you. Well, it wasn't real easy, but I went ahead and did it and promoted through that. And as soon as I finished that up, he said, you haven't been to the FBI Academy yet. I've got you signed up for that. I'm like, are you ever going to stop? Yeah. Am I ever just going to get to relax and spend some time with my family? Which I did. I mean, I would have school 2 nights a week, and I have to say that Jennifer and Bryce are the most supportive family members that a guy could hope for. Now, Bryce would remind me very often that you really should have gotten your degree before I was born. 10-year-olds have a way of doing that to you. And I would always say, well, why? So, because you'd have more time to play. You're right, so I should have. And if you ask him to this day, he'll say, yeah, he really should have done it much earlier. But so I did. I went to the FBI National Academy, and it was again, just like everything else, it was a culmination of about 250 of us from almost every state in the United States and 24 countries represented in our National Academy class. And we spent 10 weeks together up at the FBI Academy, and just taking leadership courses and some advanced courses in law enforcement, and really, more than anything, just bonding with other people in law enforcement from around the world and seeing how they do law enforcement and just building a network. My roommate from the academy works just right outside of Detroit, and to this day, he and I talk 2 or 3 times a week. A real good friend of mine is an inspector in Greece, and he and I email constantly. And it's nice to have those kind of relationships, because you've got people that you can go to to say, hey, I've got this thing that I haven't quite experienced before. Have any of you guys experienced it? And you'll find somebody that's experienced it and that's got some wisdom on how to deal with that. But so anyway, to get to Cape, I had accomplished all these things that a chief needed to accomplish, and so Jennifer and I decided that it was probably that time to make that step. And so we started researching and looking at job openings and things like that. And anytime an opening would come up, we would take a really hard look, as best you can with the internet, at the community and see, is that a community that we would want to be and that we would want to raise our family in? And most of them were not. After doing a little bit of research, being like, nah, let's not apply for that. And I keep saying us because it's a family commitment. It's not a Wes Blair commitment to be a police chief. I have a family that's behind being a police chief. Well, the thing came up about Cape Girardeau, and we were looking at that, and my first thought was, well, it can't be in Missouri, because how can you have a Cape in Missouri? That must be a misprint. But it's not, obviously. But we started doing our research on that, and everything that we saw about the community, we kept thinking, that looks like that would be a pretty good place, So I applied. I came up for the interview in an assessment process, and spent a lot of time, during those days just driving around the community and checking the community out. And I was excited. I was so excited. And I called my wife that night and I said, I hope I get this job. This really is a great place. And she said, well, what do you mean you hope? I know you're getting that job. See, my wife is more faithful than I am sometimes. Or no, not sometimes, she always is. And she said, well, I've been praying about this, as we both have. And she said, I know that how this city is really just a community of friends and family. I mean, I know that y'all are all intermarried. At some point, it seems like everywhere I've gone, somebody's like, oh yeah, he's married to her, and she's that person's cousin, and so news travels fast around here, and so I've learned but that's what makes it such a good place, is that there's that connection, there's that family connection, there's that community connection, there's that friend connection that spans back just for generations. And it makes the job of us a lot easier because y'all are looking out for each other and taking care of each other. And it makes it easier for us to look out for you and take care of you. And so my whole goal with being a police chief was that I wanted to be in a community that is very involved with law enforcement, that law enforcement can really partner with because it is their community. And that's what I found in my 3 months here so far is I have to brag on the officers. This is the most professional police department that I have ever had the experience of being associated with. The department I came from was a great department. And if y'all tell anybody back in Texas I said this, I'll say you're lying. These guys blow them away. I've never seen such a dedicated group of police officers, not only where I've worked, but in surrounding agencies. And their commitment to this community is just overwhelming. And it's because it is their community and they care about it. And that's what Jennifer and I are wanting to make this our community. And so many of you out there have been so great already about helping us make it our community. You know, for me, it wasn't such a big deal because I'm out meeting people all day, every day, but my wife and kid aren't. And so I was very concerned about how are they going to adjust to it. But people have just taken them in and treated them like their family, like they've been here forever, like they belong here, which is why Jennifer knew a long time ago that this was where we were coming. This was the place for us. And so, you know, we talked about it. So well, we're going to live in Cape because that's important to us, to live in the community that we serve. And I'm just so excited to be here. My family is so excited to be here. And like I said, we already feel so ingrained in the community. I feel like we've got family and we've got friends here already. And that, to me, that's the ultimate goal of a police chief, is to be able to be in a community that is your community, that you're protecting. And I feel like it's almost come full circle for me. I joined law enforcement because I wanted to take care of the little old ladies in my community. And now I'm in a place that is, again, my community, and I want to be the one taking care of this community. Obviously, I can't do it by myself. I've got to have a group of guys doing it with me, because I can't stay up as late as I used to be able to. So somebody's got to work night shift. But I can't tell you how tickled I am to be here and how excited I am about the future of this community and the future of our police department within this community. You're going to see a lot of great things coming out of us. You're going to see a lot of things that are really community interactive. We want to be involved in the community, not just as the police, but as service to the community and working with the community to make it better in any capacity we can, not just in the law enforcement capacity. So you'll see us doing a lot more community events, and you'll see us a lot more involved in some of the community organizations. Ashley and I had lunch a few weeks ago talking about Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and you're going to see a lot of that from us for years to come, because y'all are going to have to run me out of town because you're staying. We like this place a lot. We want us to be here. This is a department that I hope to retire from, and then go teach at the college with Carl. And maybe he'll be retiring from the college about that time, and I can just keep following him wherever he goes. So my appeal to you is, if there's something in the community that you want us, the police, to be involved in, I want you to call and ask us, because we want to do that. We want to be part of the community. And I'll leave you with this: if you haven't been following us on social media, start doing it, because that's one of the things that's a big push of mine, because that's how everybody interacts now. They interact on Facebook and on Twitter and things like that. I used to not, but I know that it's important for the future, and a lot of our younger generation do that. So we're really ramping up our Facebook program. We're ramping up our Twitter program. Some of that's about interacting with us. Some is about us just pushing information out to you. If roads are closed and you're on our Twitter account, you're going to be notified that, hey, this road is shut down. Not every time a little road is shut down for 5 minutes will we do it, but 555 is going to be shut down for a wreck for a couple hours. We're putting out a message about it to inform citizens. If we've got a potentially dangerous situation going on in a part of town that we don't want people to be in, we're going to push that out on Twitter. But we're also going to give you opportunities to know a little bit about us through that as well. I think actually yesterday all my ladies put out something on Twitter of them wearing their St. Louis Cardinals jerseys. So So some of it's going to be fun. Every Tuesday we'll be putting out traffic tips, traffic safety tips on our Twitter account, and likewise doing the same thing on Facebook. And so we encourage the interaction back with us because we really want to be a neighbor in the community and part of the community and work not just for you in the community, but with you in the community. And so I've rambled on long enough. If anybody has any specific questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Yes?
Just got a comment. What did you think about coming here and all the activity on Gone Girl right away?
That wasn't really so strange for me. And I'll have to say I was a little surprised everybody was so excited about it. But coming from Dallas, there was always something being filmed somewhere at some time. And in the community I lived in, Chuck Norris was always there filming Walker, Texas Rangers. So for me, it was kind of almost like, oh, okay, so things really aren't that much different here. And we're doing it all the time. But it has been a pretty neat experience. And I know they when they did a casting call, they said, we're going to come to the police station and talk and see if some of the officers want to be involved in the movie. I was like, good luck with that. Cops don't like doing that kind of stuff. And I walked in when they were doing the casting call, there was about 20 officers in there auditioning. I was like, okay, I guess cops do care about it. They wouldn't let me be in the movie. They said something about not pretty enough, or I don't know what that, showing up Ben Affleck, I think is what they said I might do. So, but it's been a fun experience. It's been a neat experience. I know that my guys have enjoyed being part of it because it just doesn't happen here very much. So we've kind of welcomed it to the community and kind of look forward to seeing some of my guys in the movies. Maybe I get their autographs. Anybody else? Well, y'all can't be that easy.
We have been videoing this, and it will go on the website for a slight fee. He'll edit out the part where you were talking about your old police department.
Or I can just write down the license plate of his car.
Yeah. It's a big red truck that says McClanahan Cabinets on the side.
Yes, sir.
What have you found as the biggest challenges since you've been here?
I've been pretty pleasantly surprised that Cape, as far as the police department goes, doesn't have a whole lot of challenges. I would say the biggest challenge for our officers right now is our building. If you haven't been in our building, I would love for you to come take a tour of it sometime with us. But they've outgrown it. And so we've got officers that are working in one part of a building, and then we've got a trailer behind the other part of the building. We've got a jail that floods constantly. And so to be able to interact as a police agency should, my theory is we should all be in one building so that we're interacting with each other, and not some of us in a trailer and some of us in a big building. So that's been the biggest challenge that I've seen so far. But again, what I'll have to say about these officers is how professional that they are, and the level of morale at this department is incredibly high, which, sometimes cops have a tendency to be the poor me guys, but this department doesn't do it. And they say, you know what, yeah, we're in this building that was built in the 70s, and some of it's fallen down around us, and some of us are working in closets, but we're still gonna keep working for the community and doing what we do best, and they've maintained morale. But I think that's just been the biggest challenge at this point so far and we're working on that, and council and the mayor, they know that we need a new police station, and so we're all working together to figure out what's the most economical way, because we certainly don't want to be wasteful of taxpayers' money, and we want to do it right, and build something that works, and build something that's really in the best interest of the city itself. So it may be a long process for us to do that, but that's because we're working hard to do it the right way. Yes, sir.
Two-part question. How many officers are employed, and what's the status of equipment, such as the personal protective equipment?
We have 75 sworn positions.
Your sidearm, stuff like that.
And just a few years ago, they transitioned to a new sidearm, a Glock 27, and so our sidearms are actually very up to date. And the same thing with our personal protection. One of the things that we do is we try to avoid spending taxpayers' money as much as we can, and if we can get grants or other type funding for things, that's what we do. And the federal government has a bulletproof vest program that will actually reimburse you for protective equipment. So all of our officers' equipment is current. It's within the warranty. We cycle it out when it starts getting towards the end of the warranty, and the majority of that is funded through the partnership that we have with the federal government for bulletproof vests. So it doesn't even cost local taxpayers money on that. So we're able to keep that going. I would have to say that equipment-wise, we're in a pretty good shape. Anything else? All right. Wow, those were all softballs. Y'all made it easy for me. I thank y'all so much for letting me come out and visit with you people. And like I said, I sincerely mean this. If there's anything that you want myself to be at, or you want one of our officers to be at, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, because that's what we want to do. We want to be here and be involved with you guys. All right? Thank y'all very much.